Swami Kriyananda said that about seclusion. He says seclusion is intensely enjoyable. And he went for 2 weeks to a little village in the Himalayan foothills. And he says, I just spent my whole time talking to God and taking long walks. I found there was so much enjoyment that it took a lot of willpower to have to leave it. I could have been there the rest of my life and never cared to go anywhere else, anywhere. It was so blissful. So that kind of was a little bit like my experience as well, maybe not as intense as how Swami Kriyananda experienced it, but I really enjoyed my seclusion. And on the last day when I was supposed to come back, I felt that I could carry on living for a lot longer. Like I just didn't have any desire to end it, because it really was so enjoyable, so blissful. And I just felt so much peace and Divine Mother's presence. I'll just show you some photos that I have taken. So I made this little so that's the house that I stayed in, and it was in Mecca too. And that was the beach. And from the house, there was a window that was quite a large window facing the western side. And so in the evening, when the sun was setting, you could just see the whole sun setting, the changes in the color of the sky, and then the sun sets little by little, it becomes dark. And the first night that I was there was just a tiny sliver of a moon that was here. And then by day 10, that same moon was about here. So like I was initially seeing it in this part of the window, and by the time I left, it was in this part of the window. And of course, you can see all the stars and things in the night sky. And in the morning, you get out into the backyard and you can see the sunrise. You can see all the changes of color and all. And on the first day that I was there, this is the day after I got there, so my first full day that I was there, I woke up and it was still dark. So when I went into the backyard, all the stars were still in the sky, including the morning star, the very bright one. Is that Venus? And what's the other bright star that just is a little bit lower? It's smaller, but once again, it's a very bright star.
Jupiter.
Is that Jupiter?
Just above it, there's a planet that's only Jupiter.
So Venus is the guru planet, isn't it?
Jupiter.
Jupiter is it. So that's the smaller one.
Venus is mother's, divine mother's energy.
I see. Okay, so there was all these stars in the sky, and then little by little, as the sun starts to come up, some of the stars disappear, but then there are still some stars still there. And then that Venus was the last star to disappear. And I watched that whole show from the time it was dark, when all the stars were still in the sky, to the point of until the sun fully came up over the horizon, and then the brighter star, the morning star, disappeared. And I think that was like a good hour and a half. And the whole time I was there in the backyard, I had done my energization exercises, and I was just watching this whole show unfolding in the morning. And the realization that came to me was, Divine Mother has put on such a show. And there really is no need to go and watch any other show because Divine Mother's show is so beautiful. You know, when you take away, when we live in this world, there's just so much information that's coming to us. Even just on a short drive, there'll be so many things that you would kind of notice, or there'll be billboards, or you might hear the music coming from the next car next to you. There's just so much information coming at us that the subtlety of Divine Mother's show is actually lost on us. But when you kind of take all of that away, it kind of, it just pops out like a 3D thing. And it's so exciting. And it's not exciting in a way that kind of, in a Rajasic way, Rajasic excitement is like, it pulls your energy out. But this kind of excitement is more of an inner thrill that you feel in the heart. I was telling Veda about this, and Veda said that when you take away the information, you get inspiration. And I just thought it's such a beautiful way to describe it. And exactly that's what it was. And normally we see a sunrise and a sunset, and we think it's beautiful, but we don't necessarily really feel that beauty in our heart where we think that, my goodness, this is the best show that I've ever seen. So, so that's the beach that was there. It was just an absolutely beautiful beach. The beach was about a 15-minute walk from the house, and it was about 5 minutes on the pavement, and then 10 minutes of it was just on gravel like that. So all of that there was just nobody there. And I would be walking all by myself, and it's still dark. So this photo was obviously taken during the day after I had finished my walk and coming out. But when I would go there, it would still not be very much light, and it was about 10, 12 minutes walking on gravel with my jandals. So I had to be a bit careful. So I would often walk, bits where there was grass, because the jandals were not the best to be walking. But at the same time, I didn't want to take any other shoes, because with jandals, you can just slip it off and then, have fun on the beach. So, it was just a very, very beautiful walk through that gravel. And then it comes out like that in that last picture, where you can see the ocean. And this picture here, which you can't see very clearly, is the board that kind of tells you a little bit about the place and the kind of bird life that there is there. And then there's something quite special about this one. So where you see these two trees, so they were kind of towards the back of the beach, and it created shade. So on one of the days, I was sitting there on the sand, meditating under these trees. And I saw this rock in front of me when I opened my eyes. And what came to me was the rock on which Jesus cooked fish for his disciples after he was resurrected. And to me, this rock looked just like that. Because when I went to Israel, to the Sea of Galilee, and there was this rock, and now they've kind of built a church over it, but that rock looked just like that, the same kind of a height, and you can just imagine that, Jesus, this is the kind of rock on which somebody like Jesus would be cooking fish. And so, when you're immersed in a seclusion where you're away from the world and all you're thinking about is God, 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 and our great masters, everything somehow becomes part of that whole divine mix. You see a rock and that rock becomes divine. In fact, there's an Indian saying, and the Indian saying is only in a few words, but it's going to take me a lot more than that to describe it in English. But what it basically says is, if you look at a stone and if you have faith that that stone has the presence of God in it, then that stone becomes God. If you think that stone is a stone, then the stone is a stone. Do you see what I'm getting at? So it's how you feel towards that which you see in manifestation. And what you see in manifestation, if you see in that the presence of the divine, it's filled with the presence of the divine. In fact, on the first day after I saw the whole Divine Mother show in the morning, and then went and walked on the beach, and then I thought, okay, so what would be a good prayer? And I opened this Whispers from Eternity, and I looked at the index or the contents in front here, and what jumped out at me is prayer number 7. And prayer number 7 is worshipping the cosmic idol. Do you want to know what that prayer is? It's very long, so I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I'll just tell you what it's all about. Maybe Sunari knows that prayer, do you? I'd never known this prayer existed, but it jumped out at me. Let me just find it. Number 7. With glasses, I can't seem to read these days. Okay, so worshipping the cosmic idol is more than a page long. It starts at the bottom of this page. It goes all the way here and to the next page. So it's quite a long prayer. And I'll just give you a little taste of what the prayer is all about. O infinite spirit, I shall worship thee today as finite. O cosmic silence, I shall hear thine unheard voice through the murmur of brooks, through the song of nightingales, through the sound of the blown conch shells, through the beat of ocean waves, and through the hum of all vibrations. And then I'm skipping a little bit. I shall no more I shall no more consider thee unseen, for in worship I shall look straight into and through thy finite, starry eyes to behold thy mystic heart. And then I shall behold thy vast sky body alternately adorned with stars on the dark twinkling veil of night. So the whole prayer is really about how all of manifestation is actually the cosmic idol. As in, we don't need to sit in front of our altar to meditate and to pray. All of manifestation is the altar. It's the idol. The mountains, the sea, the sky, the beaches, the seagulls, the trees, everything is whispering to us of divine presence. And when you're in seclusion, when you quiet, all of this voice becomes so much louder. And what I also found was when you come back from a seclusion, the experience of it actually grows on you. Like at the time, you are experiencing it. But when you come out of it, it just feels even more special at what you experienced. It's like all of a sudden, a deeper realization comes to you. A friend of mine, John is his name, he went to the Kumbh Mela. And he said that, so the Kumbh Mela is a spiritual gathering that happens in India once every 12 years. And according to BBC documentary, about 100 million people go to it. Is that right? 100 million? Yeah. It just sounds like such a big number. And John was saying that when you are there, the noise and just all of everything that's going on makes you want to just get out of the place, like you just can't stand it. So many loudspeakers and, you know, and all the logistics of bathing and toilets and food, and, you know, it's just so much going on. There's chanting going on in this tent and chanting going on in this tent, and this loudspeaker announcing of lost child and lost husbands and wives. And he says that all you want to do is just get out of the place, like, I don't really want to be here. But he says when he left the Kumbh Mela, he realized what a special experience the Kumbh Mela was. But for me in seclusion, I knew in seclusion what a special experience it was. And coming out of it, the experience just felt that it deepened for me. So that's the rock on which Jesus cooked. The fish when he came in his resurrected form on Easter Monday. That's what the celebration of Easter is all about. So I just considered that, you know, Jesus came to me. And then I wrote the story about the seals, or the seal. There was only one seal. Did everybody read that story? So I won't go into it again. But that seal was very, very special to me. And no matter what anybody would tell me, I would still think that that seal was the presence of Master on that beach for me, saying, I'm here, I'm watching over you. Before I went, Bernie told me that because this was the Pacific Ocean, and where Master's Encinitas Hermitage is in America, the ocean that it overlooks is the Pacific Ocean. So he's looking at it from that side. We are looking at the same ocean from this side. And so just that little bit of information that Bernie gave me made this beach even more special and this ocean more special. And when I would go there, I would kind of have the thought that Master was on the other side and watching, looking at me, or perhaps he might come, you know, walking on water and come and be with me. And so he sent me the seal. And the seal was a manifestation of Master coming to me. It was quite amazing because there was absolutely nobody on the beach at that time when I was there. And I don't think I even saw a single jogger that day, because normally there'd be one or two joggers, but that day I don't remember seeing any joggers. I was all by myself. I had already walked one way on the beach, and then I was coming back. And you know, movement catches the eye. And so this movement caught my eye, and I looked. And then it seemed like nothing, and so I walked, and then again the movement caught my eye. And at that point I got quite curious as to what was it. And it looked like the top of the rock was moving. And I thought, oh, that's a little bit unusual. Like, rocks don't move. And there was like 3 rocks, 1, 2, 3, and the middle rock was moving. And then as I got closer and closer, I thought, oh, this looks like an animal. And then it all came into focus, because I haven't got the best eyes either. So when it all came into focus, I saw this head that was moving like this, side to side. And then I saw, it's a seal. And it was so beautiful. And I stopped at that point just to kind of, well, I didn't even think, but I just stopped because it was just so unexpected. And to realize that it wasn't a rock, and yet it looked so much like a rock. It was just completely camouflaged. And then it just got onto it was standing upright, and then it got onto its 4 flippers, and then walked close to the ocean, and then it stood up again and kind of went like that, looking at the whole ocean. And then I saw it just dive back into the ocean, and then it took the color of the ocean, and then it disappeared. And in fact, the next morning, and at that time I thought, I should go and look at the board on my way out to see if they talk about seals, a seal colony. But the board didn't say anything about the seal colony. And at that point, I felt even more reverence for what I had seen. To me, that was just like the highlight of my whole experience, the presence of this seal. And so I immediately, jotted down a story about it, and I knew that this is something I would share with everybody. Because I thought that seal was there not just for me, but it was a gift for us all. And you can see the footprints of the seal. Yeah. And this sunrise was on the last day that I was there. I thought I better take some photos of the sunrise. And on the last day that I was there, I actually spent a long time, because some days I watched the sunrise from the backyard at home, in which case I would miss some of the early risings, because you'd only see it once it had come a little bit further up the horizon. But on this particular day, when I went there, the sun hadn't yet risen, and I had done my energization exercises, and then little by little the sun started coming out. And then once it was fully out, I did lots and lots of healing prayers for everybody. So many people, just feeling that the rays that were coming from this sun, because there was nobody on the beach. I mean, it's such a big, beautiful beach, and there's nobody there. And so I could pretty much do, without looking stupid, as to what I was doing. And I was going and even if somebody was there, they wouldn't hear me because the ocean is so loud. And I just prayed for so many people, just feeling the rays of the sun just flowing through me. And then I was just giving that out. And in fact, it was such a beautiful way to do healing prayers. And that day I was doing all these healing prayers before I had even done any meditation. It just felt so right to do this. And I thought, why don't I do this at home? Like, when the sun is coming out, go out and let me do this. It hasn't happened. But you get really creative, and it really puts you in tune with, you start seeing Divine Mother's presence in everything. In fact, I was listening every evening, or most evenings, I listened to one of Swami's talks. And one of the talks that I was listening to, he was talking about, the talk was on spiritual healing. And he started the talk off by that Paramahansa Yogananda had talked about all of manifestation as an idol, like what I read from Whispers from Eternity. And Swami's first thought at the time was, is he kind of going back to paganism, worshipping the sea and worshipping the mountains and all that? And then Swami realized that no, actually, but all of this manifestation has a certain consciousness about it. So, for example, the ocean, the consciousness of the ocean is something that's vast. The consciousness of the ocean is, the ocean can hold so many different life forms in it. It doesn't discriminate. And it can be so beautiful. All the different colors that it can give home to. And so if you tune into the consciousness of the ocean, it expands our consciousness. Like, can I also hold lots of different, thoughts and opinions without getting judgmental? And whether it was in that talk or another talk, Swami kind of joked, now, do you want me to give you a whole talk about the word end? And then, of course, the audience laughs. And then Swami gives a little talk about the word end. And he says the Aristotelian thinking is very much about either or. This is right, this is wrong. This is black, this is white. Yes, I want this, no, I don't want that. But he says the word and is about, yes, I can like this and I can like that too. Master gives the example of the devotees one day were fighting about whether they should make tapioca pudding or rice pudding. And when Master heard about this argument that was going on, his response was, well, make both. And so the word and is a very important word. As in, let us hold lots of different realities. It doesn't have to be one or the other. But what I was getting to here about all the different forms in nature, he was talking about becoming a channel for these various forms. Like, find something in nature that you feel drawn to. It might be the ocean. It might be a tree. It might be a forest, a river, birds in the air, whatever it is that you feel drawn to, and then become a channel of that consciousness. And that's not paganism, because everything in nature has something to teach us. Like when I look at this river, the same water never flows twice. And the river keeps flowing. It never stands still. And that can teach us many things. You look at the ocean teaches us many things. You look at a mountain rises high in aspiration. It has a solid foundation, a large base, and then it kind of gets narrower and narrower and narrower. And that can be a metaphor for something. And so we can all start, looking at nature in the form of like, this is the manifestation of the divine. And absorb that consciousness. Absorb the consciousness of the sun. One sun gives light to this whole world. The sun illuminates the moon. The moon has no light of its own. And likewise, we too have no light of our own except God's light that we reflect. And so when you connect in this way, in a seclusion with things of nature, all around you, you feel like singing that song, that in India they lived. What's that song? Well done, Lord. Yeah, everything he looked at and he sort of broke out in applause to say, well done, Lord, oh, very well done. At last we've discovered the mystic key. But yeah, all of this has come through God. And if we can start seeing the presence of the divine, the book that I actually got into was the Yugas. I found the whole book quite thrilling. I mean, there were some bits of it that were too geological and archaeological, and I kind of skipped some of those bits and pieces. But a lot of it was very, very thrilling. And the most thrilling bits of it were actually the Treta Yuga and the Satya Yuga. So we are in the Dwapara Yuga at the moment, which lasts 2,400 years, and we are into about 300 years into it. But the age that comes after that is Treta Yuga, which is the mental age, where we would be able to telepathically communicate with each other. I'd be able to read your mind and know what you are thinking. Oh, you're thinking a good thought about me, or you are judgmental about me. So in that age, we would be able to know what each other is thinking. But what was even more thrilling than the third age, Treta Yuga, was the Satya Yuga. Satya Yuga is the golden age, the high age. And Satya Yuga, you know how in the Kali Yuga, man is conscious of matter. And that the only thing that's real is things that I can experience with my senses. In the Dwapara Yuga, we begin to realize that there's such a thing as energy, that there's vibrations which are just as real. And so radio waves, electricity, all of that we can't actually see, but we know that they exist because of what we experience, right? You turn the light on and the light comes on even though we don't see the electricity coming into the house. It's invisible. And then, of course, the Einsteinian discoveries of all matter is energy. Energy can neither be created nor destroyed, but it can only change form. So the age that we're living in is one of energy. We are more conscious. And energy is very fluid. And then in the Treta Yuga, we are more conscious of thought. That everything comes through thought. You know the three worlds that Master describes? So one is the physical, astral, one of energy, and the one above that is causal, which is one of thoughts. So the Treta Yuga is how you can bring things into manifestation through the power of your thought. In Dwapara Yuga that we are in now, we bring things into manifestation by putting energy into things, right? But in Treta Yuga, we will be able to bring things into manifestation by just using our thought power. In fact, we are already using that, but we don't trust it enough. You know, these days vision boards and all have become very powerful. The movie Secret about how you can manifest. So we kind of are aware, but we don't have enough trust and faith in that concept. But in Treta Yuga, it'll be well established that this is how we can manifest, and we will have the ability to manifest simply through the power of our thought. And the thing to be careful about in that age will be that I better make sure that I'm using my power of thought in a way that is beneficial to me and beneficial to everybody else. I mean, there's work to do in every age. But in Satya Yuga is where we will be very aware of the spirit. So we can look at a mountain and we won't just see the mountain, but we will be able to see the essence of the mountain. I'll look at you and I won't just see you as this physical body that is Serena, but I'll be able to see the spirit that is Serena. So you know how Master says that when he looks at us, he sees us as beings of light? So in Satya Yuga, the golden age, we will see everything as spirit. We'll look at a rock and we'll be able to see the spirit of it. And so I found the whole Satya Yuga concept that's described in here quite thrilling. And it says that in Satya Yuga, life will be kind of very simple. Plain living, high thinking. And it can look primitive from where we are. But that's because it's not so much about external stuff. So right now, if I want to communicate with somebody on the other side of the world, I have to use these very complex gadgetry of computers and all of that. And we think that that's advanced. But in that age, by the sheer power of our thought, we will be able to communicate. We won't need this cumbersome technology. And communication will happen in the form of partly language and partly thought transference. Just like, you know, in that chapter on the resurrection of Sri Yukteswar, you may remember that line, Master saying that Sri Yukteswar was communicating the concepts of the astral world, some using spoken words and some using thought transference. So this is how we know what Satya Yuga is going to be like, because there are subtle hints of it in the autobiography of a yogi. And even, you know, that chapter about the levitating saint, that tells you what man is going to be capable of in the higher ages. And the saint with two bodies, all of these things will become possible in Satya Yuga. And they will not be considered miracles anymore, because everybody will know how to do it. And when I say everybody, I don't mean everybody. Like in any age, there are people who live a little bit behind the age that you live in. There are people who live a little bit beyond the age that you live in. And so, of course, there are going to be a whole variety. But the defining thing will be most people will be able to do these things. They wouldn't be considered miracles at all. A miracle is only a miracle because we don't understand how something works. Once you understand how it works, it's no longer a miracle. And life will be very simple. You know, when in the book Holy Science that Sri Yukteswar wrote, and in one of the bits, he says that man is meant to be a fruitarian. And I've often wondered about that. But I can now imagine that in the Satya Yuga, in the Golden Age, maybe that is what man is, a fruitarian. But then as the ages become more and more dense, as in our consciousness leans more towards the material, the foods that we need to eat are also heavier. But in the higher ages, the consciousness is lighter. We are able to directly absorb energy from the rays of the sun, from the cosmic energy, and so we're not that dependent on food. And so it's possible to be a fruitarian. Sri Yukteswar also says that a man's natural dwelling place is out in nature, in the shelter of the trees. In fact, even that, there is an example in the autobiography of a yogi where I think Babaji says that, oh no, we like the shelter of the trees, as in they don't have homes to live in. And in Satya, you see, the whole weather pattern, the climate is created by our consciousness. When our consciousness is high, then the whole climate is conducive. It's pleasant. And so in Satya Yuga, the climate will be pleasant and we won't necessarily need to house ourselves in houses. The outdoors will become just the right places for us to be. In fact, one of the things I came away with from this trip, from this seclusion, was spending more time outdoors. Because as a reminder that I want to live like men would live in Satya Yuga. So I can bring a little bit of Satya Yuga into my life right now. So next time you go out and are in nature, think that, this is how people in Satya Yuga lives. So we can start living that life. And Satya Yuga then doesn't seem so far away and so remote. We can bring some of that into this life. So yeah, I really recommend this book, even if it means, skipping the bits that just seem too scientific and all that. I don't have a very scientific mind, there's a lot about archaeology in this, and so some of that I kind of just skimmed through, but the rest of it I found absolutely thrilling, and it creates in you that it awakens in you the aspiration to live more like people would live in the higher ages. And also, the other thought that had struck me when I was reading this, and I was actually doing more of it too. So in the Treta Yuga, you can send thoughts to somebody else, right? Without needing any cumbersome gadgetry. But isn't that what we are doing when we are sending alms to somebody? So think of it as actually real. Even though in this age it seems like, does this really work? But know that it's a technique actually of the higher age. It's actually a technique of the Treta Yuga. And even when you're sending goodwill to somebody, I love you. I'm sending you my goodwill. I wish you well. Just know that this is a technique of the higher ages. And do that lots. Send goodwill to as many people as you can think of. Because we are practicing, right? Doing some of these things. And see if you can practice manifesting things in your life. Start with small things. Like, oh, I really need some milk, and okay, let me just send a thought out to Bernie to just, get me a 2-liter milk before he comes. Just things like, just do it initially just for fun and see what happens, whether the thought reaches that person or not. I mean, why not? Before we start thinking about manifesting a community or anything, let's start with, bottles of milk and chocolate. And Fijawas, that's right. In fact, Veda said today, he says, people are coming, they'll bring Fijawas for us. So, I mean, why not, Let's try doing that.
And did it work?
It worked, right? I had 2 people bring me Fijawas. And I also have some macadamia nuts. And chocolate. So these are the higher age techniques. So I think this was a really good find for me for this seclusion that I was on. Each seclusion is very different. This seclusion somehow became all about seeing God in nature, maybe because of the type of place that it was. There was just so much of it around. I want to show you some last bits of this as well. What's happened, Bernie?
Plus you had good weather too.
I had really good weather. The 10 days I was there, it was like summer. The whole thing was like summer, and it was bright. Hamilton's quite dull, It was really bright, and I was literally in my short sleeves all day long. And almost every day I sunbathed. Because this section was quite elevated, so all the other sections were below it. So I was able to sunbathe in the way that Master taught to sunbathe. And I really enjoyed it. I came away with a bit of a golden tan. I don't know whether it's still there or not. But Veda noticed that I was more tanned than I usually am, and not just bits of me, the whole body. So I really enjoyed sunbathing and just consciously, absorbing the energy of the sun. Oops. And then on one of the days, I just put a rug out and some books and things with some colored pencils. And I wrote out the prayer worshipping the cosmic idol. It's amazing, when you write it down, you get so much more, because when you're reading, you miss out. But then I got to a point where my paper finished. And then I thought, okay, to be continued, but I never finished the whole thing. But it would have taken me about maybe 3 or 4 pages like that to write the whole thing. But I really enjoyed writing out the prayer. Because, you've got time. There's no responsibilities. And these sort of things become quite enjoyable. I mean, if you're good at drawing and things, you might be able to do that. But this was the level of my creativity when it came to this. I'm able to be more creative when it comes to writing. And I was able to write about the seal encounter. So that was my way of expressing my creativity. But this one I considered it creative because I sat with my colored pencils and my big sketchbook. And then every day, this tree was just where the dining table was, and there was the conservatory in this house, and through the window you could see this tree, and every day there will be tuis on this tree. It was like, I just felt like the toys became my friends. I would sit there to go and have breakfast, and I'd look, oh yeah, of course, there's a toy sitting there. And on
Incredibly lovely picture, isn't it?
and and not just one toy, there'll be like a few of them. And on two of the days, I saw a wood pigeon as well. Because I heard this very clumsy bird, come and sit on the tree, and I looked up. Sure enough, it was this big wood pigeon. So bird life was just amazing. And when you have time, you can really observe the behavior of these birds, and somehow you feel that you connect more. So, and then the other thing I connected with, there was a swan plant. And so that was the chrysalis there. And I was watching this chrysalis every day. And it was the same on the last day that I had left. But on one of the days, I had seen a monarch butterfly that had newly emerged, because it was just sitting on a nearby plant and it just wasn't flying. And so I imagined that it had just newly emerged from the chrysalis. And that's the caterpillar. There were lots of caterpillars, and every day I was going and seeing these caterpillars. And, over the period of the time that I was there, I actually saw them grow. And I saw new caterpillars emerge. It was fascinating. And I also collected, you know how the seeds of the swan plant form? So do you know what the Cape gooseberry looks like? It's in a little holding thing.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So it's a bit like that, but much bigger. And then when it opens, every seed is attached to, those whitey things that fly?
Like the dandelion.
Yeah. It kind of flies. And so as soon as it kind of a little bit opened, I picked it out and I collected all the seeds, and I thought, I'm going to plant this. It seems like these swan plants grow very easily there. Yeah, because I looked in the neighbor's garden and they had swan plants there, and then even this place that I was living in, they had several, and some of the swan plants were coming out of cracks in the concrete, so they were just growing like weeds. I'm not sure how they'll do here in Hamilton. Sonali, do you? They do quite well?
Now I grow them every year.
Okay.
Yeah, make it big and
Yeah.
Can I add a little story in there?
Sure.
A year ago in February, was when we interred my husband's ashes out at the Hamilton Cemetery, and the berm, on the side of the berm, is the garden. So we took out some of those seeds, because my husband's hobby was to farm the caterpillars, because if we ran out of plants, we had some at our other house, and the grandkids, and we'd take an ice cream container of caterpillars over and move them around so they all had enough food. So he had a love of caterpillars. So when we were out there a year ago in 2021, interring his ashes and that, I took some of the swan plants out and I weeded the garden of the cemetery and the berm, and I planted these. And when we went back this year, in February, yay, there was 2 plants. And God, it was so happy. They didn't have any caterpillars on them, but they had actually grown. I thought, oh, I hope there's no cameras around here. And weeding out things that in the berm out at the cemetery. Yeah, because and they just grow everywhere there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because my previous attempts at growing swan plants have been that the plant just gets chewed up by the caterpillar and then there's not enough food. But here, this was quite a well-established plant, and then there seemed to be enough food for the caterpillars. And on one of the days, I actually even rescued a small caterpillar that had fallen onto the concrete, and I just picked it up and put it back on the leaf. So that felt really good. But you can do all this, you're more connected with what's going on around you when you're in seclusion. And then I was eating very, very simply, but very, very well. So the first picture there, I had baked a potato, and I had taken with me some sprouts that Veda had made me, and I called this my chunky cut salad. So you can see my Kamin Gouda cheese and my chunky salads, and with my favorite olives. So that was like one of the meals on one of the days. On the right hand side, I stewed some apples. I sprinkled some cinnamon and I grated some chocolate on it. And it was quite amazing. Somehow I just felt so creative with the food, and yet I was hardly spending any time cooking. It was all very, very simple. Like that was a baked potato that I just threw in the oven, and then just, I sprinkled some cheese. Once it was cooked, the cheese just melted. I put sprouts on it. So there was like no cooking, even with the stewed apples, no cooking. But yet, it wasn't a rushed job. I made the time to grate a bit of chocolate and just little things like that. I ate very, very simply but very well. And I lost weight. I felt so much better. I didn't feel I needed too much food. Most nights I was not eating any dinner. I would have a lunch and I just feel that, I don't need any dinner. So, and then there was a little altar that I had created where I used to meditate. So yeah, that was a little bit about my seclusion. Anybody have anything to add or anything you wanted me to talk about?
You slept.
I slept really well. I slept very early every night. And I woke up before sunrise. I felt that my whole bodily rhythm was in tune with the natural rhythm. So I wasn't using the clock to go to bed, but it somehow just tuned into the natural rhythm. And so I was having long nights of sleep because especially once the daylight saving finished, it would be dark and I would find myself asleep by about 8:30. And then I'd be awake well before 6. And and that was like my natural rhythm. So I would kind of climb into bed at about 7, 7:15, and I would listen to one talk by Swami while I was still sitting up in bed. And then after that, I'd go to sleep. Yeah.
Were there occupied neighbouring houses there?
Yeah.
They're occupied?
Yeah, they were occupied, yeah.
Not just summer bachelors?
No, didn't look like it. All the houses seemed to have their lights on.
No boats? Did you see boats?
Yeah, I saw houses that had boats.
I meant out on the water.
No, actually, I didn't.
No, I didn't think you did.
Oh, out in the distance, I did, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, it was a very, very pleasant seclusion. So.
I'm not sure as you secluded, you had the seal there.
Just some very practical things.
Oh, and you didn't drive for
No, I was actually quite concerned whether my car would start after 10 days.
Yes, that's a point.
So on one of the days, I think it might have been on day 9, I thought I'd better just start it to see if it'll... So I started it, and it started, and instead of it being parked here, I moved it here.
Just enough to flatten the battery.
Because I just didn't want to go, out in that car energy. So, okay, so in terms of the very practical stuff, is anybody interested in doing a meditation on Saturday? So what I'm thinking, if you are interested in meditating on Saturday, if we could have like a 2-hour meditation, 6:30 to 8:30, and then from 8:30 to 10:30 we have a little seva project. If you want to stay for that, you don't have to. And then from 10:30 we can have a late breakfast.
Is it what project?
Seva,
Siva, soothing.
serving.
Oh!
Yeah. So we're hoping, we'll just see what the weather is like, but one of the projects we have in mind is the taro plantation. So if you, so you can either come for the meditation, you can come, so there are 3 activities happening. Meditation from 6:30 to 8:30, the Seva project from 8:30 to 10:30, and then the breakfast from 10:30 onwards. So you can come for one of it, 2 of it, all of it. It's entirely up to you. And you can choose which one you come to. You can come just for breakfast if that's what you want to do. You can come just for seva. You can come just for meditation, just whatever you want to do. It's a way for us to be together in whatever way resonates with you. But if you want to help out with the seva project, make sure that you bring some very old clothes with you, because taro stains, or a $5 t-shirt from Warehouse, or something that you're not going to, worry too much if you spoil it, because you are definite to stain it. But yeah, it's quite easy. I'm hoping that by Saturday, before Saturday, Arun will get some sickles. You know what a sickle is? Yeah. And so it's not really weeding, you're just kind of sickling the weeds. It's when you have a commercial kind of an operation, weeding is just too hard to do. So what we do is we just cut the weeds down, and then we put mulch on top so that the weeds just die out. Yeah. But that's one of the projects. If you want to do something else, you can do something else, because I think the girls will be making some scones or pikelets, or you might just want to help out with that for breakfast. So yeah, there'll be options as to what to do. And if the weather, if it's raining, we'll have to change the project. Yeah.
Alexandra's asking Zoom over Easter with a question mark, but I can't see any Zoom happening over Easter.
Yeah, there's nothing happening over Easter. The meditation is just kind of meditation, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just to get an indication, who's likely to come on Saturday? Okay.
Maybe.
So just come for whatever. And bring, if you're staying for the gardening job, bring some garden gloves. And also, if you do have one tool that you like, just bring it in case you need it. Not that you might need it, because hopefully Arun will get enough sickles by then, yeah.
That's Saturday, isn't it?
It's a Saturday, yeah. Okay. So, shall we finish? Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, Friend, beloved God, Jesus Christ, our Kriya Yoga Masters, and saints of all religions, we humbly bow to you all. May thy love shine forever on the sanctuary of our devotion, and may we be able to awaken thy love in all hearts. Om. Peace. Amen.